When we talk about ancient Rome, the first things that come to mind are legions, wars, and conquests. We imagine a huge empire built on the strength of the sword, on the discipline and steadfastness of the Roman soldier. However, if we look at the history of Rome from a different angle, it becomes clear that its strength was not only in its weapons. Rome was not just a conqueror, it was a salesman offering its customers a unique product. This product was not just peace and order, but a whole package of services that included citizenship, roads, baths, a legal system, and most importantly, a sense of belonging. It was an offer that was difficult to refuse. It was an empire that not only conquered, but also assimilated, turning yesterday's enemies into its loyal citizens. Many historians say that the Roman passport was stronger than the Roman sword. And there is deep meaning in this, because a sword can conquer territory, but only a passport can conquer hearts. Rome created a system that was so attractive that the conquered peoples themselves sought to become part of it. Watch this video to the end, and you will learn how Rome created the most successful franchise in human history. When we think of a franchise, we imagine a large corporation that sells its business model to other companies. Rome, of course, was not a corporation in the modern sense, but its approach to managing an empire was remarkably similar. Instead of simply plundering the conquered lands, Rome offered them participation in its vast network. Rome was, in essence, a franchisor. It offered its franchisees, the conquered peoples, a whole package of benefits: roads that connected them to the center of the empire, aqueducts that provided cities with clean water, and baths that were not only a place for washing, but also a center of social life. In return, he demanded one thing: loyalty and the payment of taxes. This model was incredibly effective. The conquered peoples saw that Rome was not simply plundering them, but investing in their development. They saw that by becoming part of the Roman Empire, they gained access to new technologies, new markets, and new opportunities. It was profitable for them to be Romans. That is why uprisings were rare, and Roman citizenship became the most coveted privilege. Rome understood what many other empires did not. You cannot build an eternal empire based solely on fear. You have to give people something that makes them want to be part of that empire. Rome gave them that sense of belonging, that opportunity to be part of something great. This franchise worked on several levels. At the most basic level, it offered peace and stability. The Romans suppressed tribal conflicts, defended the borders from barbarian raids, and created safe trade routes. For many peoples who lived in constant struggle, this was a huge relief. They were given the opportunity to engage in agriculture, crafts, and trade without fear that tomorrow their lands would be seized and their homes burned. On a more complex level, Rome offered cultural and social integration. It did not simply impose its culture, it made it attractive. Roman theaters, amphitheaters, libraries, and schools became centers of public life in the conquered cities. Roman gods usually found their place alongside local gods, rather than replacing them. This created the feeling that you could be both Roman and, for example, Gallic, while retaining part of your identity. This flexibility was a key factor in Rome's success. The third and perhaps most important level was the legal system. The Romans brought their own laws with them, which, although harsh, were understandable and predictable. Instead of arbitrariness and intertribal strife, people were given the right to a fair trial, protection of property, and the right to appeal to higher courts. Roman law was universal and applied throughout the empire. This created a sense of order and security that was incredibly valuable to the inhabitants of the conquered territories. They saw that Rome did not simply rule, but governed according to certain rules. Thus, the Roman franchise was an incredibly complex and effective system. It offered not only security and economic benefits, but also opportunities for social growth, cultural development, and legal protection. It did not simply conquer peoples by force, it convinced them that being Roman was profitable and prestigious. Rome did not simply expand its borders, it expanded its influence, its culture, and its ideas. And that was its main secret. What do you think was Rome's greatest achievement? Its army or its ability to assimilate peoples? Share your opinion in the comments, and we will discuss it. Roman citizenship was not just a document, it was the key to a world of opportunities. It was a privilege that gave a person rights that were unavailable to other inhabitants of the empire. A citizen of Rome had the right to vote, be elected to public office, enter into legal marriages, and, most importantly, was protected by Roman law. Roman citizenship was the most coveted status in the ancient world, but Roman citizenship was not something that was given to everyone. It had to be earned. It could be obtained through military service, outstanding service to Rome, or, in rare cases, for a large sum of money. The Romans did not give it away for free. They made it desirable so that people would value it. Citizenship was a tool for assimilation. When a person obtained Roman citizenship, they became part of Roman society. They accepted Roman laws, Roman customs in the Roman language. They ceased to be simply a Gaul or a Spaniard. They became a Roman. It was not just a formality, it was a change of identity. The Romans were the first to understand that belonging to something bigger than your tribe or your people could be a powerful tool for uniting people. Roman citizenship was not just a privilege, it was a promise of stability, order, and protection. For non-Romans living in the vast territory of the empire, citizenship represented a ladder of social mobility. It was a path to power, wealth, and influence. A person who yesterday was a subjugated provincial resident could today become a magistrate, participate in the administration of his province, or even the entire empire. This created a powerful incentive for loyalty and cooperation with the Roman authorities. Rome did not simply demand submission, it offered partnership. The most common way to obtain citizenship was through military service. Auxiliary troops consisting of non-Romans served in the army for 25 years. At the end of their service, each soldier received not only monetary compensation, but also a coveted diploma certifying his Roman citizenship, as well as citizenship for his children. It was a brilliant move. Rome turned potential enemies into its most loyal defenders. These people fought for an empire that promised them and their descendants a place in its society. They were willing to shed blood for their future privileges, creating not just an army but a huge social mobility mechanism. Over time, the Roman Empire became increasingly generous in granting citizenship. The emperors understood that the more people felt part of Rome, the more stable the empire would be. Extending citizenship to more and more people was one way to prevent uprisings and strengthen central power. This process culminated in Emperor Caracalla's edict in 212, which granted Roman citizenship to almost all free inhabitants of the empire. This act, called the Constitutio Antoniniana, not only increased the tax base, but also finally erased the line between Rome and its provinces, making the entire empire a single civil space. Thus, Roman citizenship was not just a legal status, it was an ideology that allowed Rome to create an empire unique in its structure and longevity. It was a system that worked not only on the strength of arms, but also on the desire of people to be part of something great. And this desire was so strong that it was able to unite dozens of different peoples under one banner. But what element of the Roman system do you think was actually the most important in spreading Roman values and ideas? Was it the citizen's passport itself, or the paths that led to its acquisition? Watch the video to the end to find out the answer to this question. When we look at Roman roads, we see an engineering marvel. These roads, many of which have survived to this day, were built with incredible precision and durability. They connected the most remote corners of the empire with Rome. But their significance was much deeper than just convenience of travel. Roman roads were a kind of nervous system for the empire. Not only troops traveled along them, but also merchants, officials, philosophers, and artists. They were channels through which Roman culture, the Roman language, and Roman ideas spread. Conquered peoples who had once been isolated from each other could now communicate, trade, and exchange knowledge. Roads were also a symbol of Roman power. They showed that Rome had not simply conquered territory, but had integrated it into its system. They were tangible proof that Rome brought order and civilization to lands that had once been wild and unorganized. Roads were not just paths, they were symbols. The Romans also used roads to move troops quickly, which allowed them to suppress rebellions before they had time to grow. Roads were a tool of control, but at the same time, they were a tool of integration. They connected people who had never met and made them part of one large empire. It was a brilliant move that allowed Rome to rule over a vast territory. Roads also served as a means of rapid information exchange. The Roman postal service, or cursus publicus, operated along these roads, delivering orders, reports, and news from Rome to the most remote provinces. This allowed the central government to respond instantly to any event, whether it was a rebellion, an invasion, or a natural disaster. No other empire of the time had such a fast and efficient communication system. This gave Rome a tremendous advantage in governing its vast territory. The construction of roads was not only a military necessity, but also an economic one. A unified road network created a huge common market. Goods that were once considered exotic became available throughout the empire. Wine from Gaul, grain from Egypt, olive oil from Spain, marble from Greece. All of these were transported along Roman roads, ensuring the prosperity of both the metropolis and the provinces. The roads stimulated trade, which in turn promoted cultural exchange and strengthened ties between different parts of the empire. Merchants from different provinces met in cities, exchanged goods and ideas, and this made them part of one large economic system. In addition to their purely practical significance, roads also had symbolic meaning. Each new road was another confirmation of Rome's power and greatness. It showed that Rome had come to stay. Roads were built not only in already conquered lands, but also in new territories even before they were completely subjugated. It was a kind of statement, a kind of promise that these lands would soon become part of the empire. It was a strategy based not only on force, but also on psychology. The Romans showed that they were not just seizing land, they were transforming it, making it better, more civilized. Thus, Roman roads were much more than just paved paths. They were an instrument of power, a symbol of order, and a channel for cultural exchange. They allowed Rome to govern a vast territory, to control it, but at the same time to unite it. They were the nervous system that made the empire a single organism, not just a collection of disparate territories. And they were one of the main elements in the franchise package that Rome offered its franchisees. The Romans were masters of engineering. Their aqueducts and baths are still admired today. But these structures were not just a convenience, they were a powerful tool for cultural assimilation. Roman baths were not just a place to wash, they were the center of social life. There, people socialized, discussed news, made deals, and played sports. Baths were a kind of social club open to everyone. It was a place where Romans and conquered peoples could interact as equals. Social barriers disappeared in the baths, and people began to feel part of one society. Aqueducts, in turn, were a symbol of Roman order and civilization. They provided cities with clean water, which was a huge advantage over other cities of the time. Clean water is not only healthy, but also a symbol of prosperity. Rome showed the conquered peoples that by becoming part of the empire, they would gain access to benefits they had never dreamed of. These engineering marvels were not just construction projects, they were part of a larger assimilation strategy. The Romans built them in conquered cities to show the locals that they were getting something valuable in exchange for their independence. They created a way of life that was so attractive that people wanted to be part of it. The Romans understood perfectly well that in order to consolidate power and create loyalty, it was necessary not only to suppress resistance, but also to offer something in return. And it was infrastructure that became that powerful argument. Aqueducts that brought life-giving water to cities, baths that became centers of public life, and of course the roads we talked about earlier. All of this was visible proof of the advantages of the Roman way of life. Provincials who, just yesterday, lived in conditions where clean water and public hygiene were rare, could now see that Rome offered them much more than just domination. It offered them civilization. Rome's engineering structures carried not only a practical, but also a psychological load. They were symbols of power and organization that the conquered peoples did not have. Looking at the majestic aqueducts that crossed hills and valleys, or the huge baths with marble floors and hot pools, people could not help but admire them. This admiration turned into respect, and then into a desire to become part of this great civilization. Rome did not just build baths, it built loyalty, brick by brick, pipe by pipe. The appeal of the Roman way of life was so great that many provincial aristocrats voluntarily adopted it. They sent their children to study in Rome, adopted Roman customs, and wore Roman clothing. They understood that in order to be successful, to gain access to power and wealth, one had to be part of the Roman system. And the Roman system was open to them. Rome was not a closed club for the select few. It was a giant corporation that was constantly expanding, offering its new members more and more opportunities. Baths in particular were a tool that allowed Rome to erase social differences. There was no room for class prejudice in the baths. The emperor could sit next to a slave and a wealthy merchant next to a simple soldier. This created an illusion of equality that was incredibly attractive to those who lived in the rigid social hierarchy of their tribes. The Romans knew that by offering people the opportunity to feel part of something bigger, they could achieve much greater loyalty than simply through the use of force. But how did the Romans convince the barbarians that the ability to speak Latin was more important than the ability to shout loudly and swing a club? Let's discuss this right now. The Roman Empire was a vast area inhabited by people who spoke dozens of different languages. In order to govern such a huge territory, Rome needed a universal means of communication. This means was Latin. Latin was the language of power, law, science, and education. By learning Latin, conquered peoples gained access to Roman culture, Roman literature, and Roman law. They could read the works of Virgil, Cicero, and Seneca, and they could study Roman philosophy and history. Latin was the key to Roman society. The Romans also created an education system that was open to anyone who wanted to learn. Roman schools, libraries, and universities were places where people from different parts of the empire could communicate and exchange knowledge. This was another part of the assimilation strategy. The Romans did not simply conquer people, they made them like themselves. This language and education policy had long-term consequences. Latin became the basis for many modern European languages, and the Roman education system became the basis for the modern education system. Even after its collapse, the Roman Empire continued to live on in the language, culture, and minds of millions of people. The spread of Latin was not forced, but rather voluntary and pragmatic. The Romans understood that people would learn Latin not because they were forced to, but because it was beneficial. Latin was the language of trade, career, and power. If you wanted to become a successful merchant, official, or soldier, you had to know Latin. It was a kind of unspoken requirement, and the conquered peoples who wanted to climb the social ladder willingly studied it. Roman schools were open to all free citizens, regardless of their origin. In these schools, the children of the provincial nobility studied alongside the children of Roman aristocrats. They studied not only Latin language and literature, but also Roman law, philosophy, and rhetoric. This created a unified intellectual environment in which a new elite loyal to Rome was formed. These people, who had received a Roman education, became a bridge between Rome and their peoples, contributing to even greater assimilation. Interestingly, Rome did not impose Latin as the only language. In the eastern provinces, where Greek was the language of culture and science, it continued to be used. But even there, Latin was the language of the administration and the army, which created a need for bilingualism. This was another demonstration of Rome's pragmatic approach. They did not break the established system, but integrated their own, making it necessary for success. Thus, education and language were not just elements of Roman policy, they were powerful instruments of soft power. Rome did not simply conquer minds, it shaped them. It created generation after generation of people who thought like Romans, who believed in Roman values, and who considered themselves part of the great Roman Empire. And this was far more effective than any military victory. The Roman Empire was, in essence, built not only on the stones of roads and aqueducts, but also on the words, ideas, and books that spread throughout its territory. Religion has always been an important part of Roman society. The Romans were very tolerant of other beliefs. They did not force conquered peoples to renounce their gods. On the contrary, they included them in their pantheon, creating a unified, diverse religious system. The Romans believed that all gods were simply different manifestations of the same divine forces. Therefore, they saw nothing wrong with including Egyptian, Greek, or Germanic gods in their pantheon. It was a brilliant move that allowed them to avoid religious wars and conflicts. The conquered peoples who were allowed to worship their own gods did not feel deprived. They saw that Rome respected their beliefs, and this in turn made them more loyal to the Roman Empire. The Romans created a system in which everyone could find their place. The cult of the emperor was also an important part of this system. The emperor was not just a ruler, he was a symbol of unity, order, and stability. The cult of the emperor was a kind of glue that united all the peoples living in the empire. It was what made all Romans part of one big whole. This religious tolerance was not just a manifestation of open-mindedness, but a well-thought-out political strategy. The Romans understood that imposing foreign gods could cause resistance, so they preferred a policy of syncretism. They accepted the gods of conquered peoples, giving them Roman names and integrating them into their state pantheon. For example, the Greek Zeus became Jupiter, and their goddess of victory, Nike, became the Roman Victoria. This allowed local residents to feel that their beliefs were recognized and respected, that their gods now patronized the great empire of which they had become a part. This approach created a sense of cultural continuity rather than a complete break with the past. However, this tolerance had its limits. The Romans accepted only those cults that did not question the authority of the state and did not demand exclusive loyalty. It was a delicate balance. They allowed the worship of local gods, but at the same time required participation in official Roman cults, primarily the cult of the emperor. Participation in this cult was not so much a religious act as a demonstration of political loyalty. It was a public declaration that a person recognized the authority of Rome and its ruler. The cult of the emperor was especially important for uniting such a diverse empire. The emperor was a living symbol that connected all the provinces to the center. His image was minted on coins, his statues stood in the main squares, and temples were dedicated to him. This created a unified visual and ideological agenda that permeated the entire empire. People in Britain, Egypt, and Syria, despite all their cultural differences, worshipped the same symbol of power. It was an incredibly effective means of maintaining order and stability. Conquered peoples, accustomed to their tribal chiefs or kings, found a new, more expansive point of reference in the cult of the emperor. It was a way to feel part of something bigger than just their native tribe. Roman religious policy was thus an integral part of its franchise. It offered not only legal and economic integration, but also the spiritual unity that was so necessary for the existence of a huge multinational empire. But how did this passport help Rome survive for so long, despite internal crises and external threats? Let's talk about the perfection of the legal system in a minute. Roman law was one of the greatest achievements of the Roman Empire. It was a complex, multi-level system that regulated all aspects of life, from marriage and inheritance to trade and crime. Roman law was based on the principles of justice and equality. It was universal. Whether you were a Roman citizen or a conquered barbarian, you were protected by Roman law. This created a sense of order and stability that was very attractive to the conquered peoples. They saw that Rome was not just plundering them, but bringing them law and order. Roman lawyers were true masters of their craft. They created a system that was so perfect that it became the basis for the legislation of many modern states. Roman law was not just a set of rules, it was a reflection of Roman philosophy. It was based on the idea that every person has the right to protection, justice, and dignity. This legal heritage was one of the most important gifts that Rome left to the world. Even after the fall of the Roman Empire, Roman law continued to live on in the laws and legal systems of many countries. The Roman legal system differed from primitive tribal laws, which were often based on tradition, the whims of chiefs, or the law of the strongest. Roman law was systematic and written down. The laws were recorded, accessible for study and application, which ruled out arbitrary interpretation. This was an incredible advance that ensured predictability and stability in relations between people and the state. Provincials who were accustomed to tribal feuds and disputes based on verbal agreements could now refer to clearly formulated rules. This was a powerful tool for establishing order and trust. An important element of Roman law was its division into several categories. There was ius civile, the law applicable only to Roman citizens, and ius gentium, the law of nations, which regulated relations between Roman citizens and non-Romans. This division was pragmatic. It allowed Rome to trade and interact with other peoples without immediately imposing all of its laws on them. Over time, however, ius gentium became increasingly influential, and its principles of universality and justice gradually penetrated ius civile. This shows how the Roman Empire, being open to new ideas, was able to improve its system, making it even more effective. Law was also an instrument of economic control and development. Roman laws regulated trade, contracts, property, and inheritance. This created a stable environment for business and investment. Merchants who wanted to trade throughout the empire were confident that their contracts would be protected and their property would be inviolable. This contributed to economic prosperity and made the Roman Empire an attractive place to live and do business. Finally, Roman law was the basis for the political order. It defined the rights and duties of citizens, the powers of officials, and the structure of the state. The Roman system, with its division into the Senate, consuls, and popular assemblies, was built on the principles of law. It was not simply a dictatorship, but a complex mechanism regulated by laws. And even when the Roman Republic was replaced by the empire, imperial power continued to be based on law. This gave the system the legitimacy and stability that were so necessary for governing such a vast territory. Thus, Roman law was not just a set of rules. It was a reflection of Roman genius. It was a tool that allowed Rome to rule, assimilate, and prosper. It was the most valuable element of the franchise that Rome offered its franchisees. The Roman Empire was not only a political and military entity, but also a vast economic space. A unified economic system, a single currency, and the absence of internal customs barriers contributed to its prosperity. Roman roads built for military purposes became the main trade routes. Goods, ideas, and people moved along them. Roman merchants could trade from Britain to Egypt without encountering any obstacles along the way. This created a huge market that was beneficial to everyone. The Romans also created a single currency, which made trade even more convenient. The Roman coin, the sestertius, was recognized throughout the empire. This facilitated the exchange of goods and services, which in turn contributed to economic growth. Economic stability was one of the key factors that held the empire together. People saw that by becoming part of the Roman Empire, they gained access to new markets and new opportunities. They saw that their lives were improving. The Roman economic model was not just a system, but a powerful tool of assimilation. It created a dependence of the conquered peoples on Roman markets and Roman infrastructure. Provinces that were once self-sufficient now became part of a large economic network where they could specialize in certain goods. Gaul became known for its wine, Spain for its olive oil, and Egypt for its grain. This specialization made the provinces economically interdependent and therefore more loyal to the center that supported this system. A single currency was not just a convenience, but a symbol of unity. Roman coins, which were minted with the image of the emperor, were recognized throughout the empire, making trade simple and straightforward. The sestertius, denarius, and other coins were not just a means of exchange, they were a propaganda tool. They reminded everyone who held them of the greatness of Rome and its ruler. This created a sense that everyone, regardless of where they lived, was part of one large economic and political organism. Rome also actively developed ports and maritime trade routes. Trade flowed smoothly in the Mediterranean Sea, which the Romans called our sea, Mare Nostrum. The Roman Navy, which controlled the sea routes, protected merchant ships from pirates and ensured the smooth delivery of goods. This allowed merchants to transport huge volumes of goods, which in turn reduced their cost and made them accessible to the general population. All this created a huge common market that was beneficial to everyone. Roman citizens gained access to cheap goods from the provinces, and provincials gained access to new markets for their goods. It was a system based on mutual benefit, and it worked so well that few wanted to destroy it. Economic stability was the best guarantee of political stability. People who lived in a prosperous society were less prone to riots and uprisings. Thus, the Roman economic system was an integral part of its franchise. It offered not only security and order, but also economic prosperity, the strongest argument in favor of adopting the Roman way of life. The cult of the emperor was another tool that Rome used to unite its vast empire. The emperor was not just a ruler, he was a symbol of unity, order, and stability. Worshipping the emperor was a kind of civic duty. It was something that united all Romans, regardless of their origin. The cult of the emperor was especially important for the conquered peoples. For them, the emperor was not just a ruler, but a guarantor of peace and order. They saw him as the one who brought them stability and prosperity. The cult of the emperor was not just a religious ritual, it was an instrument of political integration. It created a sense of belonging that was so important for an empire consisting of dozens of different peoples. The Roman Empire was not just a collection of territories. It was a single organism that lived by the same rules. And the emperor was the heart of this organism. He was the one who gave it life and meaning. The cult of the emperor was the ideological pillar that supported the entire structure of the empire. It gave people a single, understandable figure who embodied all the power and grandeur of Rome. Unlike abstract state institutions such as the Senate or the magistrates, the emperor was a person who could be seen, whose portraits were minted on coins, and whose statues adorned cities from Britain to Mesopotamia. This made him a symbol accessible to everyone. A resident of a remote province could feel connected to Rome through worship of the emperor, even if he had never seen the city itself. The cult of the emperor was also a tool of unification. There were many different religions and beliefs in the Roman Empire, but worship of the emperor was mandatory for everyone. This did not mean that people had to renounce their gods, but only that they had to recognize the supreme authority of Rome. This compromise was ingenious. It allowed Rome to maintain religious tolerance while ensuring political loyalty. It was a kind of political religion that created a unified ideological foundation for the entire empire. An important aspect of the cult was the annual offering of sacrifices in honor of the emperor. These rituals were performed throughout the empire, uniting people in a single act of loyalty. They were a public declaration that the people recognized the authority of Rome and its ruler. Participation in these rituals was mandatory for anyone who wanted to be part of Roman society. Those who refused, such as the early Christians, were considered enemies of the state. Thus, the cult of the emperor was an integral part of the franchise that Rome offered its customers. It was what made all Romans part of one big whole. It was a guarantor of peace and order, a symbol of stability and prosperity. It was not just a religious ritual, it was a political tool that allowed Rome to rule a huge multinational empire. And it was this tool that helped Rome survive for so long, despite all the internal and external threats. It was what made Rome not just a collection of territories, but a united, cohesive empire. Ultimately, the Roman franchise collapsed, but it collapsed not because of external enemies, but because of internal problems. Economic crisis, political instability, corruption, all of this weakened the empire from within. The system that was once its strength became its greatest weakness. But even after its fall, Rome continued to live on. Its legacy was so strong that it outlived the empire itself. Roman law became the basis for the legislation of many modern states. Roman architecture and engineering are still admired today. Latin became the basis for many European languages. Roman culture and philosophy continued to inspire people for centuries. The Roman franchise collapsed, but its product, its ideas, its laws, its culture, lived on. Rome gave the world not only roads and aqueducts, but also the idea of a unified, civilized space. The collapse of the Roman Empire was not a sudden event, but a long, centuries-long process. The system, which was once flexible and adaptive, became too cumbersome and bureaucratic over time. The vast size of the empire required more and more resources to manage, and the tax system, which was once fair, became an unbearable burden for the provinces. The economy, based on constant conquests and a flow of slaves, began to stagnate when that flow dried up. Political instability, constant changes of emperors, and civil wars undermined confidence in the central government. The legions, once a symbol of Roman power, became a tool in the hands of ambitious commanders. They no longer served Rome, but their own interests, which led to the fragmentation and weakening of the empire. Corruption, which permeated all levels of government, from the lowest to the highest, finally undermined the foundations of the state. The system that promised law and order itself fell victim to lawlessness. Despite all these problems, Rome did not disappear without a trace. Its legacy was so profound that it continued to shape the world even after the fall of the empire. Roman law, with its principles of justice, equality, and protection of rights, became the basis for the legislation of many modern countries. Roman architecture, with its majestic buildings and engineering structures, has inspired architects for centuries. Latin, once the language of power, became the basis for Romance languages such as French, Spanish, and Italian, and had a huge influence on English. The Roman idea of a unified, civilized space is something that lives on today. The idea that different peoples can live together under one law, that they can communicate in one language and be part of one large cultural community, is the legacy that Rome left to the world. It showed that it was possible to create an empire based not only on power, but also on shared values. And although this empire eventually fell, its ideas and values continue to live on and shape our world. This is its main legacy. The Roman Empire, by being itself, became a prototype for future civilizations that would build their power not only on force, but also on shared ideas. So Rome was not just a conqueror, it was a creator. It created a system that was so attractive that the conquered peoples themselves wanted to be part of it. The Roman passport really turned out to be stronger than the Roman sword because it gave people what the sword could never give them: a sense of belonging. It was not just a promise of security, it was a promise of opportunity. The opportunity to trade, build, learn, and grow alongside the greatest empire of its time. Rome wasn't just expanding its borders, it was expanding its family. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what topic you would like to see in the next video. This will help me make the content even better.